On this episode of Sauce and Hench, we discuss the most underrated NBA players and NBA teams. Sauce and Hench is coming up. And welcome everybody to the 11th episode of Sauce and Hench. I'm Sauce, and that's Hench. And today we're going in a different format. We're going to be talking about underrated players and teams. The reason why we do this is because if you watch those morning talk shows, the First Take on ESPN, Undisputed on FS1, it's always the same players recycled. LeBron, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis, Luka. If you can think of any others, it's always those guys. So me and Hench both sat down and we both agreed that you have to find these underrated players and give them some love. So we came up with a list of our 5 most underrated players. I'll go first. My first player on this list is Gordon Hayward from the Charlotte Hornets. This is the guy that got injured when he went to Boston on a big contract.
Nice.
And I think he would have lived up to it, but not only did he get hurt, but these 2 rising stars named Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum started doing a lot better and took a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
And the Celtics are like, this is our future, and these guys are fantastic. If we can get them to develop into great superstars, we'll have one of the best duos in the NBA. So Gordon Hayward signed a big contract to go to Charlotte, and you and I both were like, why did Charlotte give him that money? No one understood that. But now he's sitting at 22.5 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. Wow, man.
Awesome. Yeah.
And the Hornets are riding a 4-game winning streak. That's fantastic. And I'm glad for Gordon Hayward. He's a Butler guy. He deserves all the credit in the world. If he can stay healthy, he's one of the better shooters in the NBA.
Absolutely. Right. He's a guy that I've always liked, and especially when he's with it's not like when these players get hurt, it's not like they lose their skill. So it's just a matter of getting back healthy. I mean, not that he's underrated or anything, but a lot of comparison injury-wise is like to a guy like DeMarcus Cousins too. Like you look at him and it's like not like he lost any of his skills or anything. He just was injured. And the same, I'm glad you brought up Gordon Hayward because that's it's not like he lost all that talent. He's a perennial all-star. Now he's just healthy again. Yeah,
just remember what he did in Utah before he left. He was averaging, I saw it was like 21.5 at the 21.9 points when he left. And now 22.5 is his career high as of right now. So if he can continue to produce like this and the Hornets can keep winning with such a young core, who knows what this Hornets team can do if they go out and get more free agents in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. I like it's cool, like you said, Gordon Hayward's, it's not like he's one of the so the reason why we're doing the podcast like this is because guys like him don't get noticed anymore, or he kind of flies under the radar now because of the injuries that he had. And
he went to a small market team.
Yeah, and Sauce and Hench are here to bring his name back into the light. So.
Exactly. All right, Hench, who's first on your list?
So number 5 on my list is a name that we've talked about a couple times throughout this podcast on a team that we played in the preseason, and his name is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yes.
He does not get enough credit. He is a young guy, and right now he's currently averaging 20.9 points per game, 6.3 assists, and 5.7 rebounds per game. And you don't see his name anywhere. And he's one, you see like, okay, you can't really put him on the level of like LeBron and them yet, but all the young guys that you hear talked about on the shows that we just mentioned are Trey and Ja and all those like names, when Shai's their same age, maybe even younger, and he's putting up stats just like them. So I think he deserves some credit because he has such a well-rounded game. I mean, 26-5, like averaging, like that's a guy who can impact a game no matter what he's doing.
It's funny, Joe, because I've never said this before on this podcast, but I've told you that my West Coast team is the Clippers. I've always liked the Clippers because I was a big Blake Griffin fan when I was growing up. So when they drafted Shai, I didn't know how I felt about it, but then he started balling out. And me and Mags both sat down after he got traded to Oklahoma City for Paul George and said, they could regret this trade if Shai Gilgeous keeps doing what he was doing with more minutes. Because he was playing for Doc, and Doc's known for not playing rookies except for Shai and this other guy you may never heard of, Rajon Rondo. So I hope the Clippers don't regret trading Shai, but for I'm seeing the last 2 years, they're hurting a little bit. It's hurt. It's a stinger.
And you see, like, I mean, the Bulls don't play in a regular season. I don't know how many times we play the Thunder, but I mean, just seeing him in 2 games in the preseason, like, he can just affect a game within the first
Yes.
couple. Like, like I just said in the stats, it just shows you how much he can affect a game. Over 5 rebounds a game. He can rebound the ball. Over 6 assists, share the ball, and 20+ points. He can score it too. Like that, and he has good defense too. So he's number 5 on my list, and definitely should be a name that should be talked about more around the league. So
I don't know if you have this stat pulled out in front of you, but what is the Thunder's record as of late? Because
I actually just looked at it this
I
morning.
I remember I looked at it the other day and went, really?
I think it's 500. I'm
Yeah,
almost positive it's 500. I think it's 5-5. I want to say
that sounds about right. I know they're in that
five and
area.
five.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
5-5.
That
Without really
well, they
any
lost.
superstars.
They traded Chris Paul. Gallinari went to the Hawks, and I think that's about it.
Steven
That's all they
Adams
did.
left.
Steven Adams left. Yep, they traded him to the
So
Pelicans.
Shea's really doing this with. I mean,
Oh,
he's
and
5
Dennis
and 5.
Schroeder.
Yeah,
Dennis Schroeder got traded to the Lakers.
yeah. So he's 5-5 with basically like really
Nothing.
nothing.
Exactly. And they have
It's
Al
pretty
Horford,
impressive.
and that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. So
All right.
so far we got Gordon and Shea. That's a pretty good duo so far right there. I'd say.
The next on my list is S. Curry. And when I say S. Curry, I mean Seth Curry.
Nice.
Averaging 17 points, 2.3 rebounds, and 3.6 assists, while he averages 5.3 three-pointers attempted in a game. He has a 59.5 three-point percentage. I don't think I've ever seen that statistic before for a guy that shoots over 5 threes a
Wow.
game. I think this guy
That's
kind of gets to go
nuts.
under the radar because he bounces from team to team. This is his
And he's Stefan's brother.
yeah. Well, when you're not even the best S Curry in the league, it kind of hurts a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is his third different team in 3 years. He was on Portland, Dallas, and he got traded to Philadelphia, and he got traded on draft night. And I even said, I was like, that's a steal for the 76ers because of how good of a year he had last year. But because when you play with a team with Luka and Kristaps, you kind of get shuffled underneath the deck, and people forget like how critical you are to the team. And the 76ers were so excited when they got him, and it's proving and it's working out for both sides. And I hope that Seth can finally find a team that he can play for and stick there for a bit, because from what I've seen, Joe, he could be a better shooter than his brother. He doesn't do as much as Steph does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you put his name down because I actually have a quick little story about him. Back when he was one of those G League guys that
He was a G League guy.
or back in when it was called D League. And as you guys know, I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and the Mad Ants actually won a D League championship back in the day. And I remember going to the championship game. Me and my dad went to the championship game, and who did the Mad Ants play in the championship? The Santa Cruz Warriors. And who was the starting point guard? Starting point guard for that team? Seth Curry. And that was so I got to see him lose in the championship to the Fort Wayne Mad Ants back in the day. And one of his assistant coaches, one of the main coolest part, I have a picture from this game. Us Bulls fans remember this name nice and clear, is one of Seth Curry's bench coaches on that team. A little nugget here was Brian Scalabrine was a bench coach for the Santa Cruz Warriors, and after they lost, and went down to the court and took a picture with Brian Scalabrine.
The White Mamba.
The White Mamba.
Could you dig that picture out and we can put it on the Twitter so everyone can see you with Brian Scalabrine?
Absolutely. Yeah, I look young as crap, and I will definitely pull it out. I mean, you could tell. I mean, he just lost the championship, and I'm over here like, I'm a huge Bulls fan. Can I take a picture with you? But yeah, so Seth Curry. I mean, I'm sure the reason he's on our underrated list is because he learned so much from Brian Scalabrine back in the Santa Cruz Warrior day. That's what I'm sure. Why he's one of the most underrated players on Sauce and Hensch's list. So
that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. I knew that he
Yeah.
played D League for quite a while, but I didn't know that his bench coach was Brian Scalabrine. That's awesome.
Yes, sir.
All right,
Yeah.
Joe. Next on your list.
All right. Number 4 for me is Slender Man himself, Brendan Ingram from the New Orleans
Yes.
Pelicans. He is currently averaging 24 points, 5.8 assists, and 7 rebounds a game. Um, Throughout this list, you're going to realize that I like guys who can do everything in a game, basically. I feel like you listen to the stats, it's in the stats 24, 5, and 7. He can do everything in a game. And he just doesn't get enough credit. He got drafted second overall by the Lakers. Didn't pan out, really didn't have an opportunity there at all because then everything happened where LeBron wanted Anthony Davis, and then he gets traded to a small market team and has guys around him, a young core around him, and sometimes you just need that change of scenery. And now you're seeing why he was drafted number 2 overall, 24, 5, and 7, and can play great defense, has a lanky, athletic body, and I've always liked him ever since he was in college. Just didn't think he got a fair shot in LA. So
No. No. Me and Pat and Mags have had this conversation a lot. When's the last time the Lakers actually developed a good rookie? You know.
not in a while. And actually, so I was telling Sauce before the podcast started that I had a list of about 10 to 15 guys, and it was hard to narrow down to 5. But another guy that the Lakers didn't let develop, D'Angelo Russell. He's averaging 25 and 3 right now.
Well,
He's
then
averaging,
you also got to put Julius Randle up there too. That's another guy, and
yeah,
he's been balling
mm-hmm,
out for the Knicks this year. That's what they
mm-hmm,
do. You have so much pressure going to LA that,
yeah,
and I can't imagine what type of situation Brandon Ingram was in, because not only was he being drafted by the Lakers, he was being compared to Kevin Durant before he even stepped on an NBA floor, and
yeah.
Kevin Durant has been a top 2 player for a long time,
And then
a
there's
long time.
all the rumors swirling around that you're the best player in the league doesn't even want you on his team anymore. He wants
Exactly.
all these young guys gone and everything. I mean, you're put in a situation where you can't succeed, and I'm really happy for him that he's on this like young up and coming team down in there in New Orleans, and I think he could be. Everybody talks about Zion being the center of it, but in my opinion, I think Brendan could be the center to that young core because
In
he's a guy who can really do everything.
in all fairness, Joe, if the more we thought about it, the last player the Lakers really developed, and they didn't really develop him, he kind of developed himself, was probably Kobe. It's been
Yeah,
that long, I think. I can't tell you
yeah, absolutely.
another player the Lakers drafted that turned out to be good for them. Like,
Hmm.
they trade D'Lo to Brooklyn, and then they traded Julius Randle to New Orleans. It was,
Yeah,
and then they trade Brandon Ingram and Lonzo and Josh Hart to New Orleans also.
yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not LeBron and Anthony, but I mean, if you look at look at the possibilities, is if they would have kept those young guys. I mean, you got a starting lineup and bench that consists of D'Angelo, Lonzo, Brandon, Julius. Like those are some names, man, and that could have been a young core for a
Yeah,
while. But obviously, they wanted LeBron and Anthony, and it worked out. They won their championship, but I think it worked out well for Brendan Ingram too, because now he's in that spot to where he didn't have too much pressure going in, and you see how it's working out for him. So
as I view the Lakers, it's kind of like the Moneyball A's, is that they always take their best players after the players want more money, and they go to LA and live out there in the
yeah,
nice life. That's what happens every
yeah,
time, and
yep,
it's disheartening. So that's why when I saw that Giannis re-signed with the Bucks, I was excited for small
yeah,
market teams.
absolutely.
Next on my list, I'm going a little bit on the young side here. I'm going with Tyrese Halliburton,
Nice,
averaging
nice.
12.1 points, 2.7 rebounds, and 5.3 assists. The 12th pick in the 2020 NBA draft to the Sacramento Kings out of Iowa State. He's shooting 50% from behind the arc. And I don't know if you've seen his jump shot, Joe, which you have because the Bulls lost a tough one to the Kings because of his
Yeah,
uh, dagger to the heart in the corner. He reminds me of
yeah,
Sean Marion when he shoots the ball. It's not
yeah,
pretty, but it's effective.
yeah.
So who
I
cares what it
remember
looks
when
like?
exactly. I remember when back on draft night they were saying that the Kings got a steal. He was projected to go top 10 in that draft, maybe even closer to top 5, maybe. But yeah, everybody's saying that they got a steal in him. So raw talent that could shoot the ball already. So
Yeah, he only averages 1 turnover a game, which is really good for a point guard or a guard in general. And then he's
yeah,
averaging 1.3 steals because of his long arms. And he
that's
stole a couple
awesome.
against the Bulls.
Yeah,
I haven't got to watch him personally until he played the Bulls, and I was impressed every time he came down the floor. I mean, like, yeah, he made rookie mistakes. It's going to happen. But
yeah,
as you said, the Kings got lucky here. Something with that
yeah,
magical 12th pick.
yeah.
I think Tyrese Halliburton is going to be the future of the Kings and the player that could possibly turn this franchise around.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all the draft reactions when they got him. The people commenting on the draft that night were just like, "Well, the Kings just got a steal and could be the steal of the draft." So, and it's shown so far.
So far, so good. You're right.
Absolutely.
All right, Joe.
So,
Number 3.
yeah. So my next guy, I'm kind of sticking with the mold of lankiness here, and here's a guy that gets overlooked because of a guy that you just mentioned in Giannis, and that's Chris Middleton for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Okay.
Dealt with some injuries the past couple of years, ACL and stuff, but now is currently averaging 22 and a half points, 5.6 assists, 6.7 rebounds, sticking with the theme of a guy who can do everything on the court, play defense, rebound, facilitate, and score. And I've seen firsthand every year besides the year that he's been injured because the Bulls played the Bucks a lot. Firsthand, I'm like, how does nobody talk about this guy?
Yeah.
He can shoot it fantastically. Like he is a legit 3-point shooter. He plays great defense and create his own shot. It's just the past couple of years he hasn't been healthy, but I totally think when healthy, he is an X factor for the Bucks. He's that guy that Giannis needs to be paired with. And I think if he stays healthy, man, I think that makes them that makes that duo of him and Giannis because they're both long and both can do basically everything. So I've always liked him a lot. I know he's always hurt the Bulls a lot, but I've always
Yeah.
liked him because I like we said in this podcast, he's me and Sauce like underrated players. I always like to look at the guys who are overlooked, and I definitely think that Chris Middleton is one of them. He's a name that you don't see on the talk shows all the time.
Oh no, but we know the sad part is, Joe, is I do remember that when the Bucks were struggling last year in the playoffs against Miami, they're pointing all the fingers at Middleton, and as you just said, he's injured all the time, so there's no way he was 100%. He probably rushed himself to come back,
Yeah,
so he can
from an
play.
ACL.
Yeah, and for a guy that's so lengthy, I didn't realize this till the other day. He has a quick release, and that's how he gets
Yes.
those shots off. And he's so lengthy, no one's
Yeah.
gonna block his shot. No one.
No.
And when he's
Mm-mm.
on, you could argue that he's a better player than Giannis when he's on.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
because
all
he
the
can
time.
shoot.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's basically the Scottie Pippen to Giannis's
Yeah.
Jordan. And I think
Yeah.
he's more underrated than Pippen ever was.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly love him. Even though I love watching him when we're not playing the Bulls. I like watching. I love him when he's not playing. Like him when he's playing the Bulls because just like you said, he can take over a game. Like all of a sudden, he just hit 4 threes in a row, and you're like, "What the
How?
heck just happened?"
Yeah.
Yeah. But what about you? Who you got next for your second
Well, I'm
overall?
going to stay in the Eastern Conference. I'm going
All
with
right.
the triple-double machine in Domantas Sabonis.
Nice.
22.2 points, 12.4 rebounds, 5.8 assists, a half a steal, and half a block a game. How's no one talking about this guy?
You know, I before this podcast started, he was on my list of 15, but I was like, I'm not going to put him on because I know you've been talking a lot about him. So I was like, I have a feeling Sauce is going to put him on his list. So I'm glad I'm going to let you shine and talk about him for a while because I know you're excited to talk about him.
Well, I'll give this credit to Pat. Pat has really helped me like the Pacers a little bit more than I did before because of that playoff series the Bulls had back in 2011. Not been much of a Pacer fan until recently. But Sabonis he plays just like his dad did when he was with Portland. He's a high post guy. He can score from up there. He can shoot a little bit. He can pass the ball efficiently, as you see, and he can rebound. He's fantastic. I love Sabonis. He's a great player, and I just love the old sense of letting the power forward take over the game, the big man take over the game. We have so many
Yeah.
guards that shoot threes and take over. It kind of gets annoying or boring.
Yeah.
So when you watch the Pacers, it's a nice change of pace. And I know I said on 2 podcasts ago, two. I said that Sabonis is leading the Pacers to a good season, even though no one expected them to have a good season, because everyone was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Vic's gonna get traded. Oh, Miles Turner is being trade discussions." And then
Yeah.
Domantas Sabonis is like, everyone relax. I got this. And he put the team on his back. And right now, the Pacers are going to be another playoff team. It could be somewhere at 3 or 4 again.
Yeah. I mean, just like you've mentioned about a couple of these players you realize when they play the Bulls, and Stacey King talked about how he put a great example on for our big men and how to small thing in the game, but how to set screens. The dude was not setting like screens to where it was just a little bit of a shoulder. I mean, he plays with no regards to his body, which I love. Plays tough, hard elbows in the paint. Like that's what needs to come back into the NBA, and hopefully some guys play against him and realize that needs to happen again, and hopefully some bows start to get thrown again, and we start to get a little bit more on the
Could
chippy
be.
side in the NBA
Yeah.
again. I hope.
Yeah.
I hope.
I sure hope so. I like me some physical basketball.
Absolutely.
Let's just not do the Malice in the Palace again, but still physical basketball.
Yeah, dude, I'd love it. You go. I mean, I'm sure every sports fan who's listening to this podcast right now, odds are they watched The Last Dance, man. And I
Oh,
always
love
tell
it.
my dad, I really, really wish that I grew up in that era of basketball, just because of all the stuff the refs let fly, man. Like, I mean, you watch a game now and it's just like ticky-tack stuff gets
Oh, it
called.
is.
It's like, you got to be kidding. Like, who got ejected the other day for just hitting LeBron's head? Was it?
That was Boogie.
Yeah. It's
Well,
like,
I was just about to mention Boogie. Last night, he got called for a blocking foul, but his heel was up off the restricted area, and he got up to protest like everyone else does. Immediate tech. As soon as he got up,
yeah.
they teched him. Like, no second thought about it.
Yeah, I hope that kind of stuff. I hope a guy like Sabonis kind of like molds some of the younger big guys into playing physical again. You know, instead of I mean, it's nice to have a big guy hit a three for your offense, but man, I hope that all these young big guys don't kind of form into standing outside the paint instead of getting in there and getting dirty with it. You know.
I want to ask you this question because this is what happens in my house. If I want to watch the Bulls, my dad will sit there and he says this every time. It's a guaranteed. It's like those old dolls that we grew up with where you pull the string out the back and it says the same stuff. He
Yeah.
always says basketball is just not the same anymore. And I go, yeah,
Yeah.
I know, Dad. I know. But I still have to watch it because basketball is basketball, no matter
Yeah,
how bad it
exactly.
can be.
Yeah, there's definitely those people. My fiance's dad, I sat down and was watching the Bulls game the other day, and he watches like absolute no basketball besides college, and he's definitely one of those guys who's just like, I can't get myself through an NBA game anymore. I mean, I understand where they're coming from because of what they watched. I mean,
Yeah.
my dad's not like that. My dad will watch a Bulls game still and not say anything like that. But there's definitely people, a lot of people that say they can't sit down and watch an NBA game. I'm not like that because I still enjoy it. I still really enjoy it, but I don't know. I hope. Even when we were younger, there was still some physicality that led.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like my head goes exactly back to when Big Nazi Muhammad chucked down LeBron James in the
Yes.
playoffs, and it's
Yes.
like anything. Like, I mean, if you saw that this year, it'd be like
Flagrant
it'd be
2,
talked
you're
about
out.
for weeks. Yeah, it'd be he'd be suspended forever. But he chucked down the best player in the game, and it was awesome, man. Like, people were saying that I was even on a petition to have a statue built outside United Center of him chucking down LeBron, man.
Well, I'll say one thing. For Max's birthday one year, we got tickets to go see the Clippers and the Bulls play. And
Hmm.
like I said, Blake Griffin was my favorite player, so I was really excited to finally see him play a game.
Yeah.
Well, Taj got Taj got a rebound, went up for a dunk, and Blake went to go block it, and Blake had hit his arm, so that was the foul. And then it slipped and hit Taj in the face, and he
Hmm.
still caught Taj because he knew what he did. And they went to review it, and you can see like Blake and Taj were talking, and Taj was kind of like, "Oh yeah, I know you didn't do it on purpose. It was an accident. You mean to do it?" Flagrant two, he got ejected. So my favorite player got ejected by the third quarter, and I was like, "This is so dumb." Like it's clear that
Yeah.
he didn't mean to hit him in the head. If like
Yeah.
for Boogie's sake, I could see why, but I don't get the no. There's no harm, no foul, no blood, no foul. That's always
Yeah.
been the rule, even when MJ played. And I get that you don't want guys get struck in the head repeatedly because concussion protocols have become such a enormous thing thanks to the NFL.
Yeah.
Um, but it comes to a point of I'm paying to come see Blake Griffin, not watch Alfred Aminu play power forward for the Clippers.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, to get back to the overall point of us going into that sort of basketball is, I think Sabonis is one of the very few guys left in the NBA right now that can hopefully be a building stone to bring some of that stuff back into the NBA. So,
Exactly. All right,
but
Joe. Number
all right,
two.
all right. I'm not a homer. Don't call me a homer for this, people. But I had to put him on this list. I don't know how you can't. Zach LaVine. I don't know. I mean, I'm about to read his stats, so there's no way you can call me a homer because the dude is averaging 27.7 points right now, 4.6 assists, and 5.1 rebounds. And then I star as well one of these stats that everybody said, well, he just can't play defense. Well, he's averaging 1.3 steals right now as well. So the dude has worked on his defense, and he is a legit scorer, top of the line scorer in the NBA right now, and people don't realize that, and people don't talk about him.
Well,
So
I got really curious, Joe. And I was like, Zach LaVine had a good week last week from the Dallas game on Sunday to the Clippers game on Sunday. So there's a good
yeah,
week right there.
even
Right.
the Lakers game played well too.
Right. I'm just talking about the entire week from that Sunday to the
Gotcha.
next
Yeah,
Sunday. So
yeah,
I went and looked, and I put this on our Twitter. Zach LaVine that week averaged 34.4 points, 5.8 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 0.6 blocks. He shot 62 from 115 from the field, which is a 53.9%, and hit 23 three-pointers on 53 attempts, 43.4%. He became the second Chicago Bull in history to hit 10-plus three-pointers in the game. The only other player is
Zach
himself.
LaVine. Yeah, can you pull up his stats against the Clippers real quick?
Yes.
Because I know some people will be like, well, look at some of the teams he's played. Well, if you pull up his game against the Clippers, I know it was a hell of a game because I watched it.
Oh, I know
And
he had
I
45
know,
points.
and you know that Kawhi's going to guard their best player. So
45
Kawhi was
points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. It shot 15 for 26 from the field, 10 for 16 from behind the arc.
So that's against Kawhi Leonard, people. So that's a guy that both people need to really pay attention to because he is one of the NBA's best players and one of the NBA's best scorers, in my opinion. And I still don't understand to this day why people think the Bulls should trade him. I think he's the centerpiece of this team, and he should be going nowhere.
I didn't want to tell you this because I know how aggravated you get, and I think I'm glad that we're on the podcast to tell you this. Somebody commented underneath the game against the Clippers and Bulls. They said they should free LaVine. I went, free LaVine? The Bulls
What
are
does that mean?
that means trade them.
Oh,
They're 4-7, which I look, Joe. The Thunder last year with Billy Donovan started the season 4-7.
and you look at it. Okay, so then you say, oh, well, 4-7. It's 3 games under 500. Well, look at the 2 of the last teams we played. We played the Lakers and the Clippers, and it's not like we got blown out either. Both of those games were 3-point losses or less. So
We've only gotten blown out 2 times this year against the Bucks.
Yeah,
and
the Pacers.
The Hawks. The Pacers. So 3 times.
Well, the Pacers we made a close game at the end, but
yeah, the score's kind of deceiving because we were Yeah, we had a bad second half. That's what happened.
Yeah. But anyway, I definitely think Zach LaVine is definitely, even by Bulls fans, not just the NBA, is one of the most overlooked players in the NBA, 110%.
Oh, I agree. And I'm glad you put him on the list because I know that's your boy, and I knew you were going to say
Yeah,
it. He was
I
he was
love
on
him.
my mind when I made this list up. But I was like, we have to cover more than just the same guys.
Exactly, and we've done that. So far, we've done it perfectly.
Yeah, we're a solid 8 for 8 on different
Yes.
players.
All right, you go number one. Let's see then.
My number one. I don't think no one ever talks about this guy because of how bad his team is. I'm going with Jeremy Grant.
All right, we're 10 for 10 then. So
He's averaging 25.1 points,
wow,
6.2 rebounds, 1.9 assists, and where is his defense? And 1.2 blocks and 0.9 steals.
you got me there. I didn't even know that he was averaging that. That's nuts.
Well, I think what the problem was, Joe, is that he was in Denver and he had to take a back
Hmm.
seat to Paul Millsap, Jokic, and Jamal Murray. And he goes, you know
Yeah,
what? I'm done. And then he was going to this new look Pistons team with a new GM. And I didn't expect him to do this good either, but my Lord, can he score a
that is
basketball?
nuts.
He's
Yeah,
having a great year, and no one's talking about this guy. He is up
no.
for most improved player. Because I'm gonna look at how many points he averaged last year with
There's
Denver.
no way it can be. No way it's over 18 points.
I don't think it's even half what he's doing now.
No, there's no way. It
Of
has
course,
to be like under 15.
it's gonna take its time now, but I think people don't talk about him because when you think of the Pistons now, it's more Blake Griffin is there, Derrick Rose, and they're what 2-7 now, the second
Yeah,
worst record in the East. I think they're
yeah.
only better than the Raptors. Oh no, they're tied with the Raptors now. Both are 2-8. Yeah, but Jeremy Grant, he has my respect.
Dude, I'm glad you said that name because I didn't even know that. So
Yeah, when you play for a bad team like that, you're going to get overlooked. And I just want to make sure that Jeremy Grant got his credit because he's easily on this list when you're averaging 25.1
yeah,
points.
and aren't
So
talked about. That's awesome. That's a good name. That's a really good one for your top one. And my top one is a name that it's not quite as underlooked as Jeremy Grant, but I think it's underlooked when it comes to perennial players. Like, I think he's underrated when you talk about top 10 players in the NBA, and his name should definitely be on the list, and he's not. Partly because he's overlooked because somebody on his team, once again, much like Chris Middleton, and that's CJ McCollum.
yep,
I've always loved McCollum, dude. Like from when they were young and nobody was talking about them at all, even when they weren't back in the day where no one was even considering Lillard as one of the best players in the NBA, and he finally got his respect. But this man needs to get some respect. Listen to this. He's averaging 28.1 points per game, 5 assists, and 4.1 rebounds per game. 28 points per game, and no one's talking about you, dude. Like, he's nasty. Like, he
he
can
is.
score. He can score. Like, he's like Levine to where you, hey, go get me a bucket. He's going to get it in multiple different ways, whether that be he's lanky enough to drive into the paint, he's long enough to drive into the paint, he's got a great shot to where he can hit open threes, he can hit contested threes, he can create his own shot no matter what. And this is a guy that not just this year, but for the past, since he was probably second, third year in the league, should have been revered as one of the best players in the NBA. So
Well,
that's my number one.
he's easily one of the best shooters in the NBA too. Like
Yeah,
when the Bulls played the Trailblazers and Lillard just I don't know what happened to him in the second half. He was still in the locker room. That's what it felt like. But CJ was carrying them, and
yeah,
there's only a few players that I will say like yell no if they rise up for a 3-pointer, and CJ is one of those guys. I did it a
yeah.
couple of times against the Trailblazers. They set a screen, he'd go around, and he'd go to pop a three because Wendell again was playing too far off the ball, and I just yell, "Don't let him shoot because it's going to go
Yeah,
in." The guys that
yeah,
this guy's averaging 11 3-pointers a game, shooting 44.5%. He's actually
that's
shooting
nuts.
better this year than he did last year with 3.7 more attempts.
Nuts.
no one's talking about this guy because of Damian Lillard, and
Yeah,
and
exactly.
obviously because they play in Portland, and no one really talks about Portland. Um,
Yeah,
but if only he was taller, then everyone would be talking about C.J. McCollum.
yeah, I love him. He's definitely one of my favorite players in the NBA that like are on the Bulls. Um, so yeah, I think we got a great list here of 10 guys. Sauce, what do you think?
I love that. That's 10
You
good
you
players that people need to keep an eye out for.
you want to go through your five one more time? List them one more time. I'll list mine one more time.
So we had Jeremy Grant, Domantas Sabonis. Then I went with, oh man, I kind of just made this list as I went. Seth Curry,
Yeah,
Gordon Hayward,
Halliburton.
and Tyrese Halliburton. Those are my five.
Yep. And then I had McCollum, Levine, Middleton, Ingram, and Shea Gilgeous Alexander, and that's a 10 that should definitely be revered as top in the NBA as we talk about players wise. And some of the names that got left off my list, I want to give some of these guys credit to is Joe Harris. I don't think he
Yes.
gets talked about
Nope.
enough. Keeping with the same there as Karis LeVert, same with
I was
him.
I was gonna say if we're gonna put Joe Harris on the list, make sure Karis LeVert gets on there too. And if you want to
Yep.
feel even better about yourself, go with Jared Allen.
Yeah, exactly. And then I mentioned his name earlier. I loved him when he got drafted out of Ohio State as D'Angelo Russell. So those are three guys that didn't quite crack my top five, but I wanted to give props to as well because I like all those guys as well. So
Yeah, there's one player I throw on there. It'd be Anthony Edwards, but he's the first overall pick, so he's not really underrated. But I don't see anyone really
yeah,
talking about him because of
no,
Wiseman and LaMelo.
yeah,
But Anthony Edwards is also stuck on the Timberwolves, and the Timberwolves lost Cat, so everyone's kind of putting Minnesota on the back burners for now.
yeah, absolutely.
All
But
right, so solid list there, as
it's
you said.
refreshing to talk about some guys like that.
So I just want to ask, we'll do one since we've consumed a lot of time on that list. Your 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 most underrated NBA team at the moment. Who do you think is the most underrated team in your opinion?
Uh, there's two teams that come to mind. The first is a team, both teams the Bulls have a lot of experience with, and one of the teams we've already talked about on this podcast. So I won't hit on them as much as the second team, but the first team would be the Charlotte Hornets.
Yes.
You look at a team like that, 6-5 right now, and Miles Sauce talked about how Gordon Hayward's on that team. That's a potential perennial All-Star if he stays healthy. LaMelo is in the perfect – I think that Gordon Hayward signing was absolutely perfect for them, not just because Gordon Hayward's in a small market team now, and that's good for his career, but also because that signing took pressure off LaMelo being that early of a pick and isn't like, okay, LaMelo, you got to do everything. No, he's got Hayward there. He's got Miles Bridges there. He's got guys that to where he can just play his game. He can facilitate. He can score when he needs to, and you're seeing it pay off. Unlike his brother, when Lonzo got to the Lakers, it was the same thing that we talked about with other Lakers draft picks. Is so much pressure was put on Lonzo's shoulder right away. You're second overall pick. You're in LA. You got to do everything. Well, that pressure is on his brother right now in Charlotte, and you're seeing they're reaping the benefits of it.
Yeah.
With him having a great season and overall Charlotte having a great season, they got a lot of good pieces there. Devontae Graham, we didn't even talk about him.
Terry Rozier.
Deontay, Scary Terry. I like Miles Bridges a lot just because he brings energy, and I love some high flyers.
How about PJ Washington? He's averaging 12 points,
Yeah,
6 rebounds, and 2.7 assists a game. I just think
yeah,
the Hornets are
they're
a
a good team.
hotbed for underrated players.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, their whole roster. This side, LaMelo is probably the biggest name on that team that gets talked
He
about,
is.
but he's a rookie, so that's for me probably the most underrated. And secondly, the second team, they're not as off to a hot of a start as I thought they would, but I think they're underrated because watch out when they're fully healthy. Like part of the reason is because they're not fully healthy right now, but we saw firsthand what they can do in the first game of the season. That's the Atlanta Hawks. I
Yeah.
think that team is legit when fully healthy. I mean, they have everything. They have shooters. They have big men that can rebound and do the dirty work in Clint Capella. And all of them, they got lengthy, long players that can shoot it and play D. They got shooters that can shoot basically once they step off the bus. And that's an underrated team when fully healthy as well. So right now, the Hornets more than the Hawks, but watch out when the Hawks get healthy for me. What about you, Sauce?
Well, this is how I do underrated teams. Is I go on the conference standings and I see like a team that really stands out. That's like, oh, they're doing that good this year. And for
Yeah,
me, I didn't even know this team was doing this good this year. The Utah Jazz,
they're 7-4, right?
7-4 and tie for second in the Western Conference, only behind the Lakers. And they're riding a 3-game winning streak right now, of wins over the Bucks, Pistons, and Cavs. But they
Nice.
got a win over the Clippers. They blew out the Spurs by 21. They only lost that Knicks game because Austin Rivers had the game of his life. They blew out Portland in the first game of the year. They're a pretty good team.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
they have Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench, who's also another underrated player that we didn't put on the
That
list.
LA got rid of.
Yeah, another guy. He's averaging 17.2 points. Mike Conley, who's finally healthy and
That,
doing
that
good for him.
that was a name I was going to put on the underrated list, and he just because he's one of my even when he was in Memphis, I think he was underrated, and he was always one of my favorite players just because nobody really talked about him, and he was a stud, and he still is a stud in my opinion.
Yeah, no one talks about. I don't get it. I don't know how no
No,
one talks about Mike Conley. When he got traded to Utah, I was really excited for him because I was like, this guy's kind of been stuck in a bad situation because Memphis is rebuilding. So
they
they
were on
finally
a
said,
few. He had a few. That Memphis team had some good years with Randolph and Gasol and him,
and
but
they had Rudy Gay for a couple of years.
yeah, but I'm just partial to him because I love like a lot of me just loves point guards that can play defense. Like I love that.
Yeah,
That's like one of my favorite things is a point guard who can D up and also score too. So that's why I'm really partial to him. But yeah, man, 7-4. They're definitely underlooked.
yeah, and then obviously you have Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert is like the glue of the team. And Mitchell's averaging
Yeah,
23.4 points, and he really don't get as much credit as I feel he deserves. Obviously
Donovan.
because
Yeah, Western
he's in Utah.
Conference.
Yeah, it's tough,
Yeah,
especially when you're a small market like that, and you can't really go
yeah,
out and recruit because no one willingly is going to go to Utah when
yeah.
you're
And you got
LA
teams
right
like
there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, you said
So
two teams, so I'm trying to find that second
think
team.
this.
You know what? I'll let them have it. I'm gonna go with the Orlando Magic.
Nice. What
I
are
think
they right now?
they're 6-5 and they're fifth
Yeah.
in the Eastern Conference, but they lost Markel, so that kind of hurts them. And I really want Markel to do good, but
Yeah, absolutely.
that's good. That's good. Kind of good news for Cole Anthony because he's gonna get more playing time.
Yeah.
That's another player that could be on the list. Is Nikolai Vucevic, 22.5 points,
Yes.
11.3 rebounds. No one talks about
He's
this
been
guy.
doing he's been doing that forever, dude. I remember when we were playing Orlando when we were good and it was like Stacy would always say, "What's your keys to the game?" Well, stopping Vucevic because he's averaged a double-double for as long as I can freaking remember watching games.
Oh, the guy's a monster, and
Yeah.
he's gonna get his number retired by the Magic
Yeah.
when he's done. That number 9 is gonna go up in the rafters. Well, it's kind of hard when Shaq and Dwight Howard also played center for the Magic, but Vucevic has been there longer than both of them.
I
Easy.
wonder how many years I don't know how easy it would be to find this stat, but how many years he's averaged a double-double? I feel like he's averaged a double-double for a long time.
Go on the limb and say almost. Oh, okay. I'm trying to see it because I have his stats pulled up, but it's got to be up there. You look for it. But I also would put Aaron Gordon on there. Aaron Gordon's underrated. The people just think of him as a dunker. Evan Fournier, and then Terrence Ross, who got traded there from Toronto.
I've always liked Terrence.
He's been their 3-and-D guy, and for every year I write off the Magic. Every year I do. I don't know why. I write off the Magic and go, "There's no way they make the playoffs this year," and then the Magic prove me wrong. And they were undefeated there for a minute until they ran into a brick wall that's called the Philadelphia 76ers. But
Yeah.
other than that,
So for his career, yeah, I got his. Well, god dang it, total rebounds. Here we go. Out of his career, let's see. Out of his career, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. He's averaged a double-double out of his 9 seasons.
Yeah.
7 out of his 9 freaking seasons, the dude has averaged a double-double. That's insane. He's averaged, in his career, he's averaged, in a total of 9 seasons, he's averaged 16 points and 10 rebounds for a double-double.
When he retires, he'll be considered.
That's a good.
When he retires, he'll be on the list of the best Magic players of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Him, Shaq, Dwight Howard, Penny Hardaway, and I can't even think of another. Maybe like Jameer Nelson or something like that.
Yeah, that's probably about it.
Or I guess they did have Nick Anderson. That was pretty good for him.
Yeah, not as luxurious career as the other names.
Oh no, but Vucevic will easily be on that list.
He always was a pain in the butt shooter, right? Oh yeah. Anytime you average out of your 10 career years, you average 7 out of the 10, you average a double-double.
You're doing your job
right.
Yeah. He's not been on that poor Magic franchise has been shuffling through players for a long time. Like their number 2 pick in 2014 was Vic, and he's already been on 2 other teams after Orlando.
Yeah. If Vucevic was on any other team, he'd probably be revered as one of the best big men in the NBA, even though he is, and no one talks about him. So,
well, for like the big NBA fans that like follow the Magic, they know like Vucevic can be a problem for a team if he's on.
Oh yeah, he's a guy you circle when you go into a game. How do we stop this guy?
It was just a problem for that for a long time. Is after Vucevic, if you stop him, it's over. Like those old White Sox teams that only had Jose Abreu, you just stop him and the game's over.
Yeah. Okay, we can walk him, and then you got Jose Rondon behind him, so we can pitch to him. But anyway, let's not talk about that crap.
I had to give it a little poke to you. All right, Joe. Is there anything else you want to cover or talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. You man, I think we nailed out 10 great players and 3 great teams to watch. And for you, and if you're haven't really watched the NBA, or you do watch the NBA and you kind of get sucked into that whole of those talk shows that just nail out, like we talked about, the LeBron, the Luka, the Giannis, the Kawhi, those names, listen to this podcast, because we just gave you 10 players and 3 teams to kind of build off your expertise and kind of show off to your friends a little bit of like, hey, Brandon Ingram or Halliburton, you mentioned those names and their stats, and your friends will be like, oh wow, like how'd you know to watch him, or Jeremy Grant or something like that.
Yeah, you'll pick up Jeremy Grant for your fantasy team,
because
you'll pick up Jeremy Grant in your fantasy team, start balling out. Your friend's gonna be like, wait, how'd you know to pick him up? I just know. I had a gut feeling.
Just know. In the back of your head, Sauce and Hensch did it for you. So, so definitely. And I know me and Sauce have talked about doing this on a weekly basis, talk whatever sport it is, NFL, NBA, MLB, whatever it is, we want to be that podcast that you guys can listen to for not only like the Chicago sports that we love and talk about, but underrated players. Underrated players and underrated teams. Me and Mile talked about this. We spent a while talking about it, and we want to be that place that you guys can come to for that breath of refreshing air of not the names that are cycled through on the daily on the sports shows, and can hear some of these names that we talked about today to enjoy and know that there's guys out there besides like LeBron James and of the world that are performing at a high level in their respective sports. So
right. I mean, yeah, you can still talk about LeBron and AD and all those guys, but after a while, it kind of gets old because it's always the same story. It's always people trying to bash on LeBron or AD, like those guys. It kind of gets sickening after a bit. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah,
you're either on one side or the other. But for these guys,
yeah,
underrated guys, you have to give them
it's the
their
same
credit and their
headlines.
dues. Yeah, same headlines every
Yeah,
year. So
absolutely.
it's nice to find these guys that aren't underperforming, but doing as good as these names that they're talking about. But since they don't play for a Dallas or an LA or a Miami, they don't get the recognition that they deserve.
Nope, not at all. And I had a blast bringing up some of these names and talking about them. And I think what we said, this was the 11th, 10th,
The
11th
11th
podcast.
episode already, yeah.
That was a good one for the 11th. And I tell you what, I hinted on episode 10. You'll hear that after you listen to that one and listen to this one. Me and Sauce got a doozy of a podcast coming up that we're going to record here in a few days. We got a fun one coming up, so be on the lookout for that as well. And as always, subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitter. And as you can see, we're not the normal podcast and not normal talk shows. We not only dig into Chicago teams, we dig into those names that no one really talks about or hits on either. So give us a follow because we'll entertain you. I promise that.
Sauce and Hench, the house of the underdogs.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
That would be a fun catchphrase for this podcast. So as Hench said, like and subscribe. Follow our Twitter to see any notifications on sports news or when the next podcast is coming out. So for Hench, I'm Sauce. We'll see you next time on Sauce and Hench.